Let's continue the conversation now with a panel that includes folks from the West and the East. First out west, from Los Angeles to be specific, political commentator Michael Reagan. Of course, you can find and follow Michael on Twitter at Reagan World. And Skyping in from Connecticut, the former Lieutenant Governor of New York, Betsy McCaughey. Thanks to you both for your time here on Newsmax Prime. We just heard David Bossie say this bathroom debate really hits home with him, the fact he's got four daughters, and this could be taking a toll on Donald Trump. For example, the latest poll out of Indiana, check this out. Trump's lead in the Hoosier state just barely outside the margin of error, leading by 6%, 37% for Mr. Trump, 31% for Senator Cruz, and Governor Kasich checking in with 22%. Betsy, it's worth noting that Mr. Trump tried to walk back his comments somewhat last night in a television interview, but will his initial comments on the Today Show have a lingering effect as we close in on next Tuesday's primaries?
Well, it's not a major national issue, but I have to tell you, there's nothing in the United States Constitution and the First Amendment's right to assembly that suggests there's a right to assemble with those who offer gender reassurances. This is a perfect example of the tyranny of a small minority over the majority. And Mr. Trump probably should not be emphasizing this issue.
So is that a diplomatic way to say you disagree with him, Betsy?
I think he's trying to be very gentle and reassuring, but maybe his New York value in this particular instance might get him in a little trouble.
Well, let's see the view from the left coast with a guy on the right. Michael Reagan, your take on this latest dust-up.
Well, is anybody really surprised how Donald Trump would feel about that? I think he absolutely was honest in what he said. I think walking it back is only a political statement at this point in time. But I don't think anybody should really be surprised. In fact, that was a question this morning that was asked of the President of the United States in his press conference there in London, England. That's how big a story that has become when you're really talking about a state's issue and what they want to do. It's really about protecting children.
And now back here in this country at the RNC meeting in Hollywood, Florida, the RNC chairman Reince Priebus struck back at proponents of the Never Trump movement, calling for party unity, saying it's essential to victory. Betsy, does this help calm fears by some Trump supporters that the establishment is working feverishly behind the scenes to find anybody but Trump? About 20 seconds.
Yes, I don't think they're doing that anymore. I think they've realized that it would be the destruction of the Republican Party.
Very quickly to you, Michael Reagan, 10 seconds, sir.
Well, Trump said he could go out and shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and still keep his followers. I think he's right.
Well, there are certainly those who are following him and reacting to yesterday's story by offering their own solutions. Listen, you two stay there, and wherever you're watching this, you stay with us too, because we'll continue the conversation after the...
Well, what you've got is you've got a one-party rule in the state of California. There's no Republicans. It doesn't really matter who wins the state of California in the primary. It's not going to go conservative or Republican in the general. It's controlled completely by the liberals in Sacramento. My God, we can't even find someone to run for governor here.
A familiar voice with a lament that is becoming more and more familiar. Michael Reagan, right here on our coverage of the New York primary Tuesday night, saying that California is not winnable for Republicans in the general election. So as November inches closer, is the GOP in danger of being shut out in all those key states that lean Democrat? Let's continue the conversation with our panel via Skype. Why, that familiar face of the familiar voice you heard, Michael Reagan, who you can find and follow on Twitter at Reagan World, and Skyping in from Connecticut, the former Lieutenant Governor of New York, Betsy McCaughey. Now, Michael, you talk about California, and obviously the New York primary was of interest the other night, but that's going to be tough in November. Indeed, almost all the states in New England that are up for grabs are going to have the primary next Tuesday. Not really a chance for Republicans there. But of the Republicans running, can't it be argued that Trump would have the best chance with his personality power?
It's more than personality to be elected president of the United States. You've got to get the votes. And when you have 10 million more women who voted in 2012 than men, and 75% of women right now are not supportive of Donald Trump. You have 85% of the Hispanics not supportive of Donald Trump. And whether Republicans want to like it or not, they are part of the Republican Party. And if they're not going to show up to vote on election day for Donald Trump, it doesn't matter about his personality. There may be a plus on one side, but there's a big minus on the other.
All right, I tell you what, for purposes of this discussion, Betsy, at least for the next minute or so, we'll take Trump out of the picture. Let's say Ted Cruz becomes the nominee. Would it be as tough or tougher for Ted Cruz in those key states?
Much tougher. The fact is, the reason that Donald Trump offers hope of taking those states is that he attracts white men who have traditionally voted Democratic but are very concerned that they have been abandoned by the Democratic Party. You're seeing them show great interest in the primary. Some are re-registering as Republicans, and that is our biggest hope.
Michael Reagan, it looks like Cruz is going to have a pretty rough day next Tuesday, at least based on the polling and what most observers and pundits predict for the upcoming primaries. He has tried to go to his own message of unity and talking about the state of the American nation at this point. Wise strategy, in your opinion?
You know, you unify after you find a nominee. That's when you unify. Up until that point, you battle out as much as possible. And his battle right now is to win Indiana and to stop Trump from, in fact, getting the 1,237 votes he needs for a first ballot win. That's his only chance, as is John Kasich, who's got a much farther road to, in fact, hoe. And it depends, of course, on the rules and what's going to be happening in Cleveland, Ohio in July. So you see, in fact, Ted Cruz trying to change his message a little bit, maybe in some ways a little bit softer. But then on the other side, you've got Donald Trump throwing up softballs that Ted Cruz can knock out of the park, like with the whole operation down there in North Carolina and the gender issue.
Let me turn to another topic, and really more the atmospherics of the race. Larry Kudlow wrote an article for our parent website, Newsmax.com, and in it, he says that Trump has managed to turn Ted Cruz into an establishment candidate, and he's done it by highlighting the delegate process in Colorado and calling it rigged. Betsy, an effective strategy by Trump, and has Cruz, in fact, become the de facto establishment candidate?
Yes, Larry's absolutely right. It's a brilliant piece, and he has labeled Ted Cruz as the de facto or last resort candidate of the establishment and connected him somehow with these very unfair rules.
Michael Reagan, let me turn to you. Was that smart strategy on the part of Donald Trump?
Well, yeah, because it's working. It's always smart strategy when, in fact, something of that nature, in fact, works. But I think what you have to look at also, other than the nomination, who can win in November. And every poll shows it's John Kasich, who's sitting at over about 180 delegates, so he's so far behind at this point. And it's about winning in November. Who's going to be able to win? I think the Republican Party is scared to death that if Cruz or Trump get the nomination, then, in fact, there's going to be a destruction of this party in November of this year. And I don't know how I will disagree with that, because I run into a lot of men who may be voting for Trump, but their wives are voting for Hillary.
Well, let's ask the female member of the panel to weigh in. Betsy?
I just can't imagine that anyone who cares about truth in office, competence, integrity, would ever vote for Hillary Clinton. She is disqualified. Fish swim, Hillary lies. It's as simple as that.
You know, you can say that, but people vote for people who are likable and relatable. And the fact is that Donald Trump is not likable by a whole group of women here in America. And those people, because they don't like him, to hell with his policies, to hell with his politics, they don't like him and won't vote for him. I mean,
but Hillary represents false claims.
More likable.
Well,
Hillary represents false claims from beginning to end. She claims to be breaking a glass ceiling. She's gotten everywhere she is on her husband's coattails. She has lied to the families of the Benghazi victims. She's lied about her finances.
I'm not disagreeing with you on the political side of it. I'm talking about the election side of it and how people vote and why they vote.
Obviously,
politically astute vote one way, but most people are low information voters and vote another.
And we will have to end it right there. To be continued at a later date. Betsy and Michael, thank you very much. Now, when we come back, my old colleague from Capitol Hill, former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Pete Hoekstra, on those 28 classified pages of the 9/11 report.